Well, protests have been held around the world today, the 8th of March, International Women's Day. The demands from country to country vary massively. In all cases, though, they are calling for greater freedom and equality. Let's cross to New York. Let's bring in Nyaradzayi Gumbonzvanda, who is the Women's Deputy Executive Director for Normative Support at the UN. Good to speak to you, Nyaradzayi. It is a job that you've been in, if I'm right in saying, for just over 2 months now, appointed back in January. Tell us about what you're trying to do and what's at the top of your agenda this year.
This year, first is my heart is bleeding when we are observing International Women's Day, when many of the women and girls around the world are in situations of conflict, are hating and are abused. That is very difficult for us. And at the same time, also looking at why we need to continue to put more attention to investing in women with the levels of poverty that we continue to have in the world today. But it's also a moment of celebrating, of course, the many progress that has been made and the extraordinary work that is happening in various countries.
So it's a bittersweet day. I mean, here in France, when you talk about Women's Day, equality, we think about femicide, murders of women by loved ones and men, and also about gender pay gap, equality in much of Europe. If you'd go somewhere like Afghanistan for women's rights, it means just being able to be educated, not being stopped by, for example, in Iran, the everyday police on what you wear. From your point of view, you talked about many issues. Is there something that you want to highlight this year, somewhere that you've looked at, you believe, despite the odds, there has been incredible change?
Definitely there has been incredible change when we look at the general areas of legislation to prevent violence against women, when we look at efforts that are there around girls' education. But the laws are one step. What is important is to make sure that within our communities, the existing agreements that are there are brought into effect. So a critical part for me today, especially and at the moment, is the call to end wars. Conflict and wars undermine the huge effort that is there to advance the situation of women and girls. So that is top on my mind, is to say no to war, and in the context of Gaza, to have a ceasefire now. That is very top on my mind. But equally top on my mind is the many people living in extreme poverty when we know another world is possible.
Nyaradzayi, you're a trained lawyer. This is something you've campaigned for, women's rights, years in Zimbabwe. I just want to get your sense of where we are now, all of the crises in the world. Are you more hopeful to when you started out in your career?
I was born during the war. I know another world is possible. We have to keep hope alive. We need less military expenditure and more expenditure for peace, for social justice, for opportunities in communities. So I am hopeful. Our member states, our governments, and our communities need to prioritize peace, to prioritize ending poverty, and to prioritize support to communities.
Really nice to talk to you this evening. Nyaradzayi Gumbonzvanda, UN Women's Deputy Executive Director, new into the job and passionate about making change. Thank you for talking to us here on France 24.